G'day, it's Dion here, Heavy Diesel Australia. I don't know if you saw the last video, you would have recognised this. A 440, it's a 500 cube stroker we're building for a fella. I made a video on oil flow up to the, or questions about oil flow up to the rocket gear. So we've got BAM roller lifters and T&D roller rockers, and we were looking at the we were priming it with the drill, and we got 80 pound oil pressure, but what we couldn't see is too much oil. We couldn't see any really coming out of the rocket gear. So I made a video about that, and as it happens, someone must have shown the owner of BAM lifters, who therefore reached out to the supplier in Australia for BAM lifters, Racemax Direct, and somehow they found my phone number and rang me and said, you know, the owner saw it and blah blah blah. Anyway, after some talking with them, they put me onto another fella in Adelaide. I'll just say John. John's his name, but I don't know if I need to mention his last name because I don't know if I got permission to. You know, I don't want to mention his last name on a YouTube video if he doesn't want it. Anyway, if you know 440s, and yes, no, don't, yes, sometimes I do, but here's the oil gallery there and there. So the oil pressure for the rocker gear comes from this number 4 cam bearing, and then you wonder why you can't get it at the rocker gear when you're priming it with a drill, right? So it's more or less timed. So we've got the crank at, you know, just past top dead center. Well, sorry, before top dead center, 35 degrees. And as you can see back there, number 8 exhaust lobe is up and nearly pointing towards number 8. So roughly, with this Lunati cam, that's where the oil gallery meets up with the drilling in the cam. So if we put a little bit of turning on the drill, we get oil pressure out of that rocker post. This is what I've been trying to prove, because I can't run the engine here. The motor's going back to country South Australia, about 7-8 hours away. I'm not going to be able to run it and check the oil flow to the rocker gear myself with the rock covers off, which it'd be ideal if we could. So the video I made before was about the oil flow up through the lifters, and I mentioned about this small hole, and it's been mentioned that you should machine a little flat there to let oil come up through that big hole from the block into that little hole and feed the push rods. But I think because this motor's done a year's worth of thrashing because we had a problem with the previous lifter. We looked at the rocker shafts, there was no damage. So it must have been getting oil up there. But if you want to check on a new build before you put it to work, of course, and therefore wreck your rocker gear, which you don't want to do, I suppose you could try what I'm doing here now. We can prove that there's oil coming up to that post, but there's nothing coming out that post. So what we did prior to making this video is then we worked out that if we turn the crank 360 till we get it to stay on the socket. I think it was about 10 degrees past from memory. 10 degrees past top dead center. And if we give the drill a little turn, we get oil pressure. We're not quite right there. If we go back a bit, try it again. It's here somewhere. There it goes. There it goes. So we're at about, well, we just passed top dead center. Must be 30, 40 degrees past. So it seems that the crank has got to do a full turn. Of course, the cam does half a turn in that full turn. But so we've got oil coming out that rocker post. And that rocker post, which is what everyone says, that the oil flow is timed, which of course we've just proved. The oil flow is timed on a 440 Chrysler. Now, the other point, I was speaking to a fellow here in Adelaide called John, who said if you're not happy with the oil flow to the push rods, so if you run it with the rocker covers off, not happy with the the oil flow to the rocker gear, if you go to the trouble of machining a 1 or 2 thou flat here, what you can order is, so these run, or this particular motor runs a 9.5 inch push rod. You can order them with restrictors. So John was saying, I haven't checked, but restrictors in the push rods. So you get a 30 thou, 60 thou, I think that's what he said. Restriction in the push rod, because there's a lot of oil that comes out of that gallery down there where those lifters are. And if you create an easy path for it to go up to the rocker gear, as a mate said, you'll probably end up with oil in the back seat. So, going back to the point, there's no damage on here after a year of thrashing on the rocker shafts, so I'm sure we've got enough oil flow. But you can see how easy the oil flow is. We just do a couple of turns with the drill and it comes spewing out of there. So, look, long story short, don't worry about it. My opinion anyway. You'll get oil flow up to the rocker shafts. It's all good. You don't need to fool around with restricted oil flow through your push rods or modifying your BAM lifters, or I just don't think you need to worry about it. You do 2 turns, 3 turns on this drill and there's oil coming out. It'll have plenty of oil. I'm sure it will. So, yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing and liking and looking and listening and commenting. I like comments. I replied to a few comments before. A guy on the previous video commented about the timing of the cam bearing for the oil flow. And that's what made me go through the process of checking it more thoroughly. And he's right. So that's good. I like it. Thanks for watching. Go and build something killer.